Hello there, my friend. Today we're taking you step by step through the 5 stages of growing a business, okay? From finding the perfect business idea to building it from the ground up, mastering the 10 most important business skills, growing to a billion-dollar company, and then showing you what it takes to be a Fortune 500 CEO. Welcome to Alux, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. All right, so let's start off with stage 1, finding the right business idea. Because, Aluxer, most people who start a business, they often waste years working on something that was doomed from the start. If you want your time and energy to actually pay off, you need a business idea that makes sense for you and can actually survive out there in the real world. So grab a pen and paper, my friend, because by the end of this segment, you'll know how to pick a business that makes sense for you, how to stand out from your competitors, and how to validate your idea so you know it can actually make you rich. Aluxer, most people who say they want to start a business never actually do, and the ones who try often waste years working on an idea that was doomed from the start. And that's because they either chase trends, copy somebody else's idea, or dive into industries they don't know anything about. If you want your time and energy to pay off, you need a business idea that makes sense for you and can actually survive out in the real world, okay? So grab your pen and paper, my friend, because here's our promise. By the end of this video, you'll know how to pick a business that makes sense for you, how to stand out from your competition, and how to validate your idea so you know it can actually make you rich. All right, so you want to come up with a business idea that'll make you rich. Of course you do. If you're thinking it's as simple as asking, what's gonna make me the most money? Well, think again, okay? Because that approach almost always backfires. Like when people see something like AI trending, they think I'll start an AI company without knowing the first thing about how the industry works. Or worse, they end up spending their life savings on some guru telling them that their course can make them rich quickly. But maybe they go in the opposite direction. They say, well, I really like writing poetry, so I'll turn that into a business, and then they're crushed when nobody's lining up to pay for it. The problem is, most people never really think about their business idea very much at all. They either chase money in a space they don't understand, or follow their passion into a market that doesn't exist. But what if there was a way to avoid those traps? What if you could find the overlap between what you love, what you're good at, and what people are actually willing to pay for? Well, my friend, that's where the Ikigai method comes in, okay? Now, Ikigai is a Japanese concept that translates to reason for being, and it also happens to be one of the most powerful tools for finding business ideas. It's built on a simple but brilliant framework. 4 circles, and where they all overlap, that is where the best ideas are born. So let's break down each circle one by one to see how they can shape your business. All right, the first circle is all about finding what you're good at. You know your talents, your strengths, the things you can consistently deliver at a high level. This is really important when thinking about your business, okay? Because think about it. If you're a brilliant coder, building a software startup makes sense. If you're a natural communicator, maybe sales, marketing, or media is your lane. If you've got an eye for design and a mind for functionality, you can probably make great products. Business is built on what you're good at. It's like playing a game on home turf. It creates an advantage right from the start. And in the long term, every business runs into challenges, right? But if you've built your company on something that you're already skilled at, those will be problems you'll know how to solve, or at least you can figure it out as you go. So ask yourself, what am I genuinely good at? Where do I outperform others without even trying? Because imagine if you tried. Now, the second circle is about finding what you love. This matters, okay? Because if you're building a business, you're going to be spending long nights, early mornings, and weekends grinding away at this thing. So if you hate the work, you're gonna burn out fast. But if you love it, you'll keep going when others would quit. And you'll be more creative. And you'll be more obsessed, and the people around you will too. Think about Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, the man clearly loves rockets, cars, and ambitious engineering projects. And that kind of energy becomes contagious for the people who work with him. So ask yourself, what do I get excited about? What problems or industries do I never get tired of talking about? That is your second circle. Your third, then, is what you can get paid for. Because, yep, can't forget about that, right? Because look, okay, you can get good at something and love it, but if nobody's willing to pay for it, that's a hobby, my friend, not a business. The good news is you can be talented and passionate about something in a proven industry, and really almost anything can make money if you position it right. I mean, people laughed at the idea of selling bottled water. They laughed at the idea of strangers paying to sleep in people's homes. And then Airbnb happened. But the key is there has to be some kind of path to monetization. If you can clearly connect your skills and passions to something that people are already paying for, you've got yourself a solid business idea. So ask yourself, what value can I provide that somebody would actually pay me for? Now, the fourth and last circle in Ikigai is what the world needs. So when it comes to business, the truth is that this one is, well, kind of optional. If you can find something you love, something you're good at, and something you can get paid for, you've already got yourself a business idea worth pursuing. When your idea also solves an important problem in society, your ideas become more meaningful, but it doesn't necessarily become a better business idea. Alright, so that's the Ikigai method. When you know what you're good at, what you love, and what you can get paid for, and optionally what the world needs, you've chosen the business that's a right fit for you and actually works. So, now that you know what business you want to start, there's another problem waiting for you, and if you don't solve it early, it'll come back to haunt you later. You see, most businesses fail, but it's not because they have a bad business idea. It's because another business with the same idea just outperformed them. You're probably not the only person who can code apps, sell fitness programs, or design jewelry. Competition is real, and to succeed in business, you have to deal with that reality. However, the best way to do that is to actually avoid competing altogether. And this is where the blue ocean strategy comes in. You see, most businesses compete in what's called a red ocean, where tons of sharks are all fighting over the same fish. That's what it's like in a crowded market. Everyone's selling the same thing to the same customers at the same price point. The water here turns blood red because everyone's cutting prices, copying features, and fighting for scraps. The alternative is the blue ocean. Wide open, uncontested waters where you don't have to fight sharks because you're swimming in a space of your own. In business, this means creating a market where competition becomes irrelevant. Instead of trying to play the same game as somebody else, you create your own market entirely. One of the best examples of this is Cirque du Soleil. See, back in the day, the circus industry was basically dying. Ticket prices for the circus were stuck at rock bottom because competition was brutal, and every circus was putting on the same animal shows and clown acts. When Cirque du Soleil came around, they didn't try to be a better circus. Instead, they eliminated the expensive animals, reduced the silly clown routines, and raised the artistry and storytelling of their performances. And the result was a completely new form of entertainment, a mix of circus and theater. By doing this, they attracted a whole new audience of adults willing to pay premium prices for their shows. They weren't fighting for scraps in the red ocean anymore. No, they had created a blue ocean all their own. So, once you've figured out the business that fits you, the next question is, how do you create your own blue ocean? Well, this is where you need to look at your idea and start thinking differently. What assumptions could you eliminate that everyone else is taking for granted? What could you simplify or reduce that customers don't actually care about? What could you amplify that people really do value? And most importantly, what could you create that nobody else is offering? Let's say your Ikigai points you toward nutrition. So if you sell diet plans or generic supplements like everybody else, you'll drown in the red ocean. But what if you eliminated the cookie-cutter diets, reduced the outdated calorie counting obsession, and raised the focus on long-term health and personalization? Well, in that case, you could create a service where you get your customers to take some microbiome and DNA tests, and then get a hyper-personalized meal plan out of it. Suddenly, you're not just another nutritionist. You've built a business that feels impossible to copy. That's the real power of the blue ocean strategy. In the short term, it helps you stand out, but in the long term, it gives you room to innovate, get paid more, and build a deeply loyal customer base because they can't get what you're offering anywhere else. So, now that you've figured out what kind of business you want to start and you know how to stand out from the competition, naturally the next question is, how is this thing actually going to work? I mean, you need to know how your business will function in the real world, how it makes money, how it reaches customers, and why anyone should care in the first place. If you don't figure that out early on, you'll waste years figuring it out as you go. Luckily, there's a simple framework for breaking all of this down. It's called the Lean Canvas method, and it's basically like making a one-page business plan, but without all the boring Excel sheets. All you have to do is figure out the 9 key elements of a business that matter most by answering 9 quick questions. So let's go through them all one by one. The first question is, what problem are you solving? This is really the heart of your business, okay? If you're not solving a real problem, you don't have a business. Uber, for example, solved the problem of standing on the curb waving for a taxi that might never come. That problem was so universal that people were desperate for a solution. Once you've identified the problem, the next question is, who exactly are you solving it for? Too many entrepreneurs say, my product is for everyone, and that is the fastest way to fail, okay? Successful businesses are built by serving specific people with specific needs. Like, for example, Facebook started as a platform just for Harvard students. They built traction by narrowing the focus and only expanded once all of Harvard was on board. Now we move on to your unique value proposition. This is the answer to the question, why should customers choose you instead of anyone else? You could think of this one like the one-sentence promise that makes your business stand out. For example, Apple doesn't just sell phones. They promise beautifully designed devices that just work. That's what cuts through the noise and grabs people's attention. Once you know your value proposition, the next question is, what's your solution? This is where you describe your product or service in plain, simple terms, so just imagine you're pitching it to a friend over coffee. Like, Dropbox's original solution wasn't described as a cloud-based file hosting service. It was simply a folder you can access from anywhere. Clear, simple, and effective. And after that, come channels. How are you going to reach your customers? A lot of entrepreneurs build something and just assume that people will magically find it. But you need to know where your customers are, and then you need to meet them there, because distribution is just as important as the product itself. For example, Gymshark didn't take off just because they made great fitness clothes. They had a massive influencer campaign on Instagram where they knew they could reach their audience. Now the next piece is revenue streams. How is the money actually going to flow into your business? Or basically, what's your business model? Look at Google, for example. Everything they do is free for you, but all of those ads you see are paid for by companies that want to sell you stuff. And that's money right in Google's pocket. So, ask yourself, are you selling products, subscriptions, advertising, or services? Now, right alongside revenue, you need to look at cost structure. How much does it take to deliver your product or service? A lot of founders fool themselves here, okay? They think they're making money, but once the costs pile up, they realize they're actually drowning. Restaurants are a classic example here. On the surface, it looks like they're pulling in big sales every night, but once you factor in rent, food, staff, marketing, the margins are razor thin. It's a non-negotiable. You need to know how much you're spending if your business is going to survive. Next, you have to ask yourself, what are my business's key metrics? Because every business has a few key drivers of success. For a subscription business, for example, it might be customer retention. For an e-commerce brand, it could be the conversion rate. For a YouTube channel, it's watch time. If you don't know your key metrics, you'll waste time chasing vanity numbers that look good, but don't actually move the business forward. And finally, there are unfair advantages. So what makes your business different from everything else in the market? This is the piece of the puzzle that most people forget about, but you won't because we already talked about it when we covered the blue ocean strategy. Your unfair advantage is how you differentiate yourself. It's the thing that makes you hard to copy. Whether it's your positioning, your unique approach, or the market space you've created for yourself. So, if you pull all of these 9 elements together, problem, customer, value proposition, solution, channels, revenue, costs, metrics, and unfair advantage, you have a lean canvas. It's not about having a perfect plan, but if you can fill out this honestly, you'll have more clarity than 99% of people who say they want to start a business. All right, my friend, so we've talked about how to find the right business for you, how to stand out from the competition, and how to turn a rough idea into an actual plan. If you remember earlier in this video, we told you to grab a pen and paper, and if you're serious about building your future, we actually really encourage you to do that, okay? Write this stuff down. You can literally go back through this video, answer the questions, and follow the steps. And by the end, you'll have a solid business idea in your hands, one that could change your life and help you build the wealth you've always wanted. And look, okay, that's the thing. The only real secret to building wealth is to stay aligned with your goals every single day. The only way you're actually going to make progress is by putting what you learn in videos like this into action. And that's where the Alux app comes in, okay? You know that we built the Alux app for one reason and one reason only, because growth requires consistency. So think of this app as your personal growth companion. When you sign up for the Alux app, you answer a few quick questions about where you are now and where you want to end up, and the app creates a personalized learning path with daily lessons, expert courses, and practical tools designed to keep you on track for your exact goals. So, if you're serious about building wealth and leveling yourself up as a person, this is the perfect place to start. You can scan that QR code on screen to get 25% off your yearly plan. Invest in yourself, my friend. It is the only way to push life forward. All right, so with that said, let's move on to stage 2 of this journey, shall we? How to build your business from the ground up the right way. Because, you see, starting a business feels like standing at the foot of a mountain made of problems, and no one teaches you how to solve them. Until now. Okay, let's go step by step through the fastest way to turn your idea into a business that prints money every day, even while you sleep. You see, most people treat starting their first business like a giant puzzle where every single piece has to be solved at once. They convince themselves they need the perfect logo, the perfect website, the perfect business plan before they can even begin. So they end up spending months polishing their brand, designing flawless systems, or worrying about how they'll hire employees when they're not even making money yet. That's like worrying about taking step 7 perfectly before you've even taken step 1. And the thing is, by the time you actually get to step 7 for real, everything will have changed anyway. So the truth is, starting a business isn't about solving every problem at the same time at any given moment. It's just about solving the problem in front of you right now. Because imagine your business like a pipe carrying water. The water only flows as fast as the tightest bottleneck allows. And now imagine that pipeline is your business, and instead of water, it's carrying money. Every time you solve a bottleneck, the flow increases. Then another bottleneck appears and you fix that one. If you keep doing this over and over again, just solving the problem that's immediately in front of you, that is how you build a business that makes money day after day with or without you. But that begs the question, if building a business is really just clearing the bottleneck in front of you, what are the biggest problems you'll actually face? And in what order do you need to solve them if you want your business to get off the ground fast? Well, let's go through the major constraints one by one in the exact order you will run into them. With each step, you'll knock down another bottleneck and unlock the next level of your business. Okay, so the very first problem you need to clear out is the legitimacy constraint. That is step 1. Because let's face it, okay? Until your business is officially a business, you don't really have a business. You're just playing around with an idea and the world can smell that. On the other hand, once your business is registered, suddenly people know that you're serious. You can sign contracts, you can invoice, you can get paid. It's like flipping a switch from "this might happen" to "this is happening." So here's what official actually means. For most people, it's starting an LLC or whatever the equivalent is where you live. You'll need to register for taxes, get any license or permits your type of business requires. This is non-negotiable, okay? Open up a separate bank account just for the business. If you don't, you're going to create a nightmare for yourself down the road. Now, even though this kind of stuff isn't technically doing business, it's essential. But that doesn't mean you have to overcomplicate it. The goal here isn't to build a legal fortress that lasts like 500 years. It's just to get you in the game without creating problems for yourself. So just pick the simplest option that protects you, get the paperwork done, and move on. Once you've done this, congratulations, my friend, you've solved the first constraint, and you're now officially a business owner. The next problem you have to solve is the visibility constraint. That's step 2. Because you can have the best product in the world, but the truth is, if nobody knows about your business, it effectively doesn't exist. Now here's where most people get it wrong, okay? When they think about visibility, they start thinking way too long-term. They imagine branding campaigns, fancy websites, marketing strategies that might matter years down the line, but none of that is going to help you get a business off the ground fast. In the beginning, what you really want is just to hit the ground running and capture as much attention as you can, as quickly as you can. The fastest way to do that is with a launch. Basically, an event or a period of time where you promote what you're selling really hard. Again, no need to tweak your logo or change the font on your website. The best thing you can do here is to start off simply. You know, make a content post on social media, run a few ads, send cold emails to your ideal customers, tell your friends and tell them to tell their friends. Reach out to absolutely everyone you know and ask them, do you want this? Do you know someone who might want this? Or do you know someone who might want this? That's a launch. It doesn't have to be complicated, you just have to create a moment for the world to get to know you. Once you've done that, suddenly your business isn't just real on paper, it is real in people's minds. So after this, the next problem you're going to face is the revenue constraint. That's step 3. Because look, okay, after your launch, you'll probably get some business in the door. But after a week or two, the hype from your launch will die down, which is to be expected, okay? And you need to be ready for that. Every business, no matter how small, needs a baseline level of revenue to survive. And it doesn't have to be huge at the start, but it does have to be consistent. Once you've got that, the opportunities to scale are limitless. To do this, you basically need to build a steady version of your launch. Instead of a one-time blast of attention capture, you're setting up ongoing efforts that keep attention and sales flowing. This often means a simple landing page or website that clearly explains what you do, who you help, and how people can buy from you. It means posting content, running ads, and sending emails. And it means asking for referrals, because often your first customers are the best way to find your next ones. The best part about this is you don't need thousands of customers. Depending on how expensive your stuff is, you really only need somewhere between 5 and 50 people who will buy from you consistently. And once that's in place, you can rest assured that your idea works, and you might even be making some good money along the way. Now, of course, once you get some customers, you not only have to deliver everything that you've sold them, you also have to keep creating attention for the business, keep making sales, and keep the whole operation moving forward. And that's where you hit the capacity constraint, because no matter how smart or hardworking you are, your day is not getting any longer than 24 hours. The only way to remove the capacity constraint is to go from being the only person inside the business and build up a core team to handle its different functions. Now, obviously, this looks different for every single business. What a cafe needs is not what a software company needs, but generally speaking, there are a few roles that every serious business eventually needs to have. You'll need marketing to generate attention, sales to turn that attention into money, operations to deliver what you've promised, and finance or accounting to make sure the money is tracked and the business stays profitable. Depending on your industry, you might also add customer support, fulfillment, or project management to keep things running smoothly. But honestly, if you can get to the point where other people, not just you, are selling, you've hit a major milestone. If you can train somebody else to reliably convince strangers to give money to your business, then you don't have a side hustle anymore, my friend. You've got a proper working company. And look, okay, when you're starting out, and if you want to move fast, you don't need a dozen full-time employees. 1 or 2 reliable people, even as contractors, can start by doing a handful of these functions at a time, and that can free you up in ways that you can't even imagine yet. Now, as the headcount inside of your business begins to grow, managing everything that's happening inside is gonna be a little bit more complicated. In fact, that management chaos is the next constraint in front of you. It's step 5, and the only way to solve it is with systems. Remember, you're aiming for fast here, so these systems don't need to be fancy, but they do have to exist. The point is to keep your business running smoothly without burning yourself out. If you're running a service, that means having repeatable processes for delivering to clients. If you're selling a product, that means setting up systems for production, shipping, and support. Keep it lean, keep it simple, but make sure it works. Once you've put these systems in place, your business is never one bad day away from collapsing, so you've solved the chaos constraint. At this point, you've got consistent revenue, you've got systems in place, and you've got a team that can run things without you needing to hover over every detail. It's an incredible achievement. Your company now makes money by itself, whether you show up on Monday morning or not. But here's the thing. Because you've been moving as fast as possible, you've built what's called a minimum viable business. Now don't get us wrong here, that's a million times better than no business at all. But probably it doesn't have as many customers as it could. It doesn't generate as much revenue as it could. Right now it is stable, but it's not operating at its full potential, which means, naturally, your next constraint to solve is growth. Your job as a founder shifts once again here. So what you want to do is set up the role of the architect, working on the systems that make growth possible. Or as Elon Musk puts it, building the machine that builds the machine. Now this could mean implementing new tools or processes that help your team close more deals, deliver faster, or scale customer support. It could mean finding new marketing channels, improving how you onboard customers, or tightening your operations so the business runs smoothly as it grows. It could also mean stepping back to learn new skills yourself, like leadership or negotiation, or even just networking to find people to do business with. The key here is to focus on what actually matters. Because think about it, okay? Lowering the cost of making one product from $50 to $48 is not as important as launching a new product. You want to be working on solving the right problems at the right time. Or in other words, this is the point where the theory of constraints becomes a full-time job. Repeat that process over and over again, and the business evolves from a lean, functioning machine into something far bigger than the minimum viable version that you started with. Now, eventually, you might reach a point where you're making more money than you ever imagined. Your team is running things, and your only real job is to keep spotting and removing constraints. But sooner or later, you might come across one that you can't solve. Maybe it's a new market you don't understand, a skill set you don't have, or simply the realization that you've taken the company as far as you can take it. At that stage, the constraint isn't the systems or the market or the product. The constraint is actually you, the founder. But don't worry, okay? It's not a bad thing. This is the moment where you're faced with a choice. You can bring in someone better suited to take the company further, or you could sell the business and cash out. Both options are wins, okay? Either you keep the cash flow or you take the big paycheck. Either way, you can look back at everything you've built and be proud. It's hard to get this far, so if you've made it, you've earned the right to decide what happens next. All right, my friend, that is how you start a profitable business fast. Now, hopefully we're starting to get your gears turning here a little bit. If so, leave a like on this video, and remember, if you're serious about building wealth and becoming the ultimate version of you, look, we've got a whole community of like-minded people waiting for you inside the Alux app, and you can get it at a discount by scanning that QR code on screen. All right, now let's move on to stage 3, okay? Which is mastering the most important skills of growing a business. Because, you know, the business world is changing faster than ever. But if there's one thing that never changes, it's that money follows skill. It always has, and it always will. So let's go through the 10 timeless business skills that print money forever. Master these, and you'll never have to worry about money again. So, let's start off today with a handful of indispensable core business skills. And first up, the skill is strategy, which in business is the foundation for everything. The problem with the average business is that they confuse strategy with just having an idea. They'll say, I'll open a cafe, or I'll sell clothing, I'll build an app. But that's just picking something and hoping it works out, okay? One of the best examples of true strategy is Netflix. They started out making DVDs, but instead of clinging to that idea, they asked, where is the market going? That's when they switched from physical media to streaming. It was immensely successful, and when everyone else started streaming too, they had already created their own shows and movies, which turned them into one of the most powerful media companies on the planet. So that's what the skill of strategy really is, not just picking an idea, but choosing the right market to play in and, well, the right strategy to dominate it. That is the kind of thing that will never go out of fashion. All right, moving on. The next skill is all about figuring out how to position yourself in that market to stand out from your competition. And that's where the skill of innovation is indispensable. Most businesses think innovation means creating something the world has never seen before. And so they end up pouring years of effort into something that nobody asked for. On the other side of that coin, you've got Apple. You see, Apple didn't actually invent the MP3 player, the smartphone, or the tablet. But once people got their hands on an iPhone, every other smartphone looked outdated. And the same goes for the iPod, iPad, and the Mac computer. At the highest level, that's what innovation really means. It's not about dreaming up some wild invention. It's about making something that already works so much better than what's already out there that people have no choice but to notice it. Now, the next skill is marketing, okay? Because even if you have an incredible product, it won't matter if nobody knows about it. Most businesses treat marketing like shouting louder than anyone else. But that's average marketing, okay? It generates cheap attention and then fades into the background. If you want an example of world-class marketing, look no further than Nike, okay? When you see Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, or Cristiano Ronaldo in Nike gear, it associates their products with winning, performance, and excellence. Nike generates attention in a way that makes people care about its message. That's why Nike has some of the best marketing on the planet. Average marketing gets you seen, but exceptional marketing gets you chosen. And being able to do that is always going to matter. Now, marketing gets attention, yes, but obviously you need to be able to turn that attention into money. And that's why the next fundamental timeless skill of business is sales. Now, this one's a tricky one, and honestly, it gets a bit of a bad reputation because your mental image of the quote-unquote salesperson is probably a used car salesman trying to pressure you into paying way too much for a piece of junk that'll fall apart as soon as you drive off the lot. In reality, though, sales at an exceptional level doesn't even feel like selling. First of all, the process starts way before you ask someone for their credit card. The best businesses in the world offer natural solutions to real wants and needs that people have. So they're never in a position where they have to, scam anybody. At the highest level, the skill of sales is really just the skill of helping other people make the right decision. So forget about the sleazy car salesman and just think of sales as the bridge between creating value and capturing it. If you can master this, get to the point where you could literally sell ice to an Eskimo, that whole trope, then you will never have to worry about money again. So, those were the core skills of business: strategy, innovation, marketing, and sales. But look, okay, this isn't just about having a great product and selling the hell out of it. At the highest level, it's also about the softer skills. The more subtle things that don't show up on a balance sheet week to week, but actually do make the most of your money in the long run. So the next one we're talking about is negotiation. It's a fun one. And to show you what this looks like at the top of the game, one of the most interesting case studies is SpaceX, because they had some pretty unique challenges. So on the supply side, SpaceX had to buy parts and materials from companies that were used to charging outrageous prices to the US government. But Elon Musk refused to do that, so he negotiated those costs down, saving the company millions and proving that SpaceX could build rockets for a fraction of what NASA used to spend. And on the customer side, Musk had to negotiate billion-dollar contracts with the US government itself. So he convinced them to bet on a private space company, which was unheard of at that time, but SpaceX came out of it with the contracts that secured their survival. At the highest level of business, negotiation is one of the most important skills you can hone, because one bad deal can kill your company, but a fantastic deal can create massive value. That's why negotiation is a timeless skill. All right, skill number 6 is leadership, one of the most valuable on this list. Now, most people, when they get into any sort of leadership position, think it's all about giving orders, setting targets, and pushing for results. And while that might work in the short term, it creates a culture of fear and competition when, in reality, you'd want people to work together because they're on the same mission as you. Exceptional leaders do something different, okay? And to show you, look at Satya Nadella, the new CEO of Microsoft. So when he took over as CEO in 2014, the company was struggling with a toxic, ultra-corporate culture where internal politics ran rampant, and the business was slowing down because of it. So one of Nadella's first moves was shifting Microsoft from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture, where employees were encouraged to experiment and their managers were trained to coach them if they made mistakes, not criticize them. All of that didn't just make Microsoft nicer. No, it truly reinvigorated their people and made them one of the world's most valuable companies all over again. So that's what exceptional leadership actually looks like, okay? Not just being the guy giving orders, but being able to shape a culture that drives results in the long term. All right, moving on. The next skill on our list is system design. And this is one that often gets overlooked, but it's one of the most important skills when it comes to actually growing a business. System design is the skill of building the processes and routines that happen behind the scenes in your company. Think about everything from how orders are taken, to how your product gets made, to how your customers are served. The problem with the average business is, honestly, they just improvise their systems. Tasks get repeated, processes are messy, mistakes pile up, and before long it snowballs out of control. But if you want an example of system design at an exceptional level, look at McDonald's. Everyone knows them for being fast because inside the kitchen every single detail is designed to run like clockwork. But what you don't see is that McDonald's, as a company, also runs like a system. They've perfected franchising so they could take that same restaurant model and repeat it thousands of times across the globe. And on top of that, they've built ultra-efficient systems for supply chains, sourcing, distribution, and marketing, all working seamlessly at a global scale. That's why McDonald's, which at its core is really just a burger joint, became one of the most successful businesses in history. Because their systems are bulletproof. And that's the power of the skill of system design. When implemented right, it can turn any regular business into a scalable machine. All right, so the next skill on our list today is resource allocation. And this is one that most people don't even know about, but it's happening every single day. Resource allocation is the skill of directing your company's focus, money, and energy. So think about it, okay? A company has a product, marketing and sales, operations, and people working in it, which creates a ton of complexity. Great resource allocation is all about managing it well. So think knowing which departments to grow, which projects to fund, which people to hire, and where to double down so the whole company keeps moving forward. It's a tough skill, honestly. Most businesses waste time and money on the wrong thing, but by contrast, look at how Jeff Bezos handled Amazon. Even when the online store was already a huge success, he kept reinvesting in ideas that could fuel the company's long-term growth. The best example is Amazon Web Services, its cloud computing division. What started out as a small side project is now by far the most profitable part of the entire company, all because Bezos spotted its potential and directed resources toward it. That's what the skill of resource allocation really is, being able to identify what the most important thing is and then pouring the right time, money, and energy into it. All right, so moving on, let's talk about timing. That's the next skill on our list, and most people don't even think of it as a skill. But it absolutely is. Timing is the skill of making the right move at the right time. A lot of entrepreneurs come up with brilliant ideas that should work in theory, but the world just isn't ready for them. And the perfect example of this is Vine. They were the first platform to focus on short-form vertical video, the exact thing billions of people now consume every single day. But at the time, smartphones weren't powerful enough, internet speeds were too slow, and there wasn't an ecosystem of creators to sustain it. Vine was simply too early, ahead of its time. But years later, TikTok launched with pretty much the same idea, but at the right moment. Phones had better cameras, internet connections were better, and content creators were everywhere. The timing was perfect, and that's what allowed TikTok to explode into one of the most dominant social media platforms in the world. The difference between Vine and TikTok was not the idea, it was timing. And that's why timing is such a timeless skill in business, because even the best idea in the world will fail if the world isn't ready for it yet. All right, now on to our 10th skill today. It is networking. Now, most people overlook this because they think a good idea and some hustle are enough to build a business, but the truth is, in this journey, you'll need people to help you solve problems you don't know how to solve. You know, suppliers, manufacturers, strategic partners. You can't survive in business without a network. One example of someone who has mastered this skill is Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. So people who know Sam have said that if you dropped him on an island filled with savages, you would come back a month later and he'd be running the place. Basically, he's got an exceptional ability to build relationships with exceptional people. That's sort of how OpenAI started, with a world-class team of brilliant minds who wanted to build AI. And now look at where they've gotten, okay? They've changed the world. That is the power of networking. Tools will change, industries will evolve, but the ability to build relationships with the right people has always been and will always be one of the most timeless business skills. Okay, Aluxer, we've covered a lot of skills here today, but we feel like we've got to give you one more bonus skill here because honestly, executing all of these skills at a high level is really just the price of survival. The thing is, my friend, the economy is competitive, okay? Every serious company has good products, talented people, solid marketing budgets, and innovative ideas, which means that if you're selling something, there's a pretty good chance someone else at your level is selling it too. So how do you truly stand out for the long term? Well, that's where the skill of branding comes in. And we're not talking about a logo or a catchy slogan here, okay? That's not branding, that is decoration. Real branding goes a lot deeper than that. At its essence, branding is the sum total of every interaction a customer has with your business, the entire experience. And nobody has mastered this better than Apple. Their Think Different campaign made customers feel like they were a part of a movement. Walk into any Apple store and every detail is designed to pull you in. The staff is extremely helpful and friendly, and when you get a new product, unboxing it feels like an event. When you use it, it just works, and it works beautifully. The point is, every interaction you have with Apple, whether it's with their ads, their stores, their people, or their products, it feels exceptional, and that is why Apple's brand is so successful. No matter how good the technology is at other companies, they haven't been able to replicate that yet. And that's the power of the skill of branding. It's the single biggest lever a business can pull to separate itself from the pack and build a legacy. Alright, Alexer, those were the 10 timeless business skills that print money forever, plus a bonus. Make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to keep learning how to build wealth. And remember, if you're serious about actually learning these skills and putting them to use in the real world, invest in yourself and come and join us inside the Alux app. Alright, but now let's move on to stage 4. Things are getting pretty serious now because now we're asking, what does it take to build a business worth $1 billion? Well, let's take a look at the numbers, shall we? In the US, nearly half of all companies fail in their first 5 years. The average small business owner earns around $70,000 and Fewer than 5% of companies ever cross $1 million in sales. So as you can probably imagine, the road to billion-dollar land is filled with traps and challenges, but it's not like it's impossible to navigate, okay? Plenty of businesses have done it, and when you study how, you can actually see a pretty clear path. This is every challenge you have to overcome to build a billion-dollar company. Okay, so just quickly before we get started here, let's be clear about what the objective is, because this is where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck right at the start. 99.99% of companies never become billion-dollar companies because they never planned to be in the first place. Most people set out to solve small, usually local issues, like starting a coffee shop or a local marketing agency. And don't get us wrong, that can definitely earn you a living. In some cases, it might even make you rich. But let's face it, it'll never take you to a billion because it doesn't happen by accident. If you want to build a billion-dollar business, your first challenge will be to find a billion-dollar problem to solve, and that is the first challenge in this journey. Look at Uber, for example. The global taxi industry was worth billions of dollars, but it sucked. Airbnb solved the problem of overpriced hotels and underused homes. Netflix took on the frustration of renting DVDs. Amazon tackled the inefficiency of retail. PayPal simplified online payments. SpaceX is lowering the cost of putting things into orbit. The common thread in these billion-dollar companies is they hunted down problems big enough that solving them unlocked billions of dollars in value. Because if you're the one who solves it, a slice of that value flows straight to you. So if you want to build a billion-dollar company, don't waste your time chasing tiny problems. Think bigger, okay? Go after the problems that are worth $1 billion. Now, solving a big problem is obviously only half the battle because tons of people can see the problem, but very few can turn it into the right product. And that's where the second challenge on the journey to billion-dollar land comes: creating a category-defining product. Take electric cars, for example. They've actually been around for over a century. But before Tesla, nobody actually wanted to drive them because they were clunky, ugly, and painfully slow. Something you only bought if you were obsessively eco-friendly. When Tesla launched the Model S, it was fast, it was sleek. It felt like you were getting all the good things from a regular car, but higher tech. And there wasn't a single other company that could match them. The Model S was the category-defining electric vehicle because it turned EVs from a niche experiment into the future of the auto industry, and every other car company was suddenly playing catch-up. To build a billion-dollar business, you can't settle for being slightly better than what already exists. You have to set the new standard, and that's what a category-defining product does. So, with a billion-dollar solution to a billion-dollar problem, you've got the foundation of a billion-dollar business. But honestly, plenty of companies with a lot of potential die in this stage. So many founders think building the product is the finish line, when in reality, it is just the start. That's why the third challenge is to build a scalable distribution system. The best example of this is Amazon. They sell everything, right? So it's not even that they have some groundbreaking product. Instead, they've got warehouses, vans, thousands of delivery drivers. They built an engine that could get anything into anyone's hands, anywhere. Amazon became the storefront for the entire internet, but today, it isn't really a retailer. It's a distribution company. You see, a category-defining product without scalable distribution is just a prototype. Billion-dollar businesses win because they have a distribution system that can scale exponentially without collapsing under its own weight. They figured out how to get their product seen, how to sell it, and how to get it into people's hands, millions of people's hands. Alright, so getting on to the more advanced stuff now, you can brute force a business with your own energy and a little bit of help. But if you truly want to scale, especially to $1 billion, you'll eventually realize something. You can't be everywhere, you can't do everything, and you can't even be the one who makes all the decisions. So how do you make sure good decisions keep happening in your company even when you're not the one making them? Well, that's what the fourth challenge is, creating a powerful company culture. And there's no better example of this than Google, okay? From the outside, Google's culture looks like it's about free lunch and colorful offices with ping pong tables. But it's not, okay? Day to day, Google employees are encouraged to think big, take risks, and even spend 20% of their time on projects outside of their main role. That's how products like Gmail and Google Maps were born, because the culture created an environment where good ideas could flourish without needing approval from the very top. Google's culture is all about fostering innovation and experimentation at every level, and that's a big reason why they're so successful. At the end of the day, a company's culture is a shared set of values, habits, and expectations that keep it moving in the right direction even when the founder isn't in the room. Because at the end of the day, a company is called a company for a reason. Businesses scale on people, and a powerful culture is what ensures those people are aligned, driven, and working toward the same mission. Now, beyond that, there's a stage in every company's life where the excitement starts to be replaced by chaos. A missed email here, a late shipment there. It is messy, but survivable. But when you start to grow seriously, suddenly one late shipment becomes 10,000. One buggy product update crashes millions of devices, and one accounting mistake lands you in jail for fraud. The truth is, plenty of businesses don't grow as much as they could because they're just, well, sloppy. That's why the fifth challenge on your way to billion-dollar land is instituting operational excellence. And this concept actually comes from Japan. So after World War II, Japan became an electronics powerhouse. They became known for their craftsmanship, efficiency, and a certain standard of quality that you just couldn't get anywhere else. Sony, for example, built its reputation internationally by making operational excellence a guiding principle. For them, how they made their products, how they ran their business, and even tiny details like keeping their offices clean and their handwriting neat were just as important as the products themselves. All of that is operations. The real turning point for a business comes when it realizes that if it wants to be a world-class company, it needs to do everything in a world-class way. Because small things add up, okay, positively and negatively, and usually how you do one thing is how you do everything. But the thing is, once you're operating with Japanese-like efficiency, you'll probably realize that you're not the only one. Other companies have standards too, you know, so this is basically the price of admission. Therefore, if you don't protect your business from the competition, everybody else will take what you created and run with it themselves. That's why the sixth challenge is securing a competitive moat. A competitive moat is like a unique advantage that protects your business from copycats and keeps competitors from taking your market share. Look back at the companies that we've already talked about. Sony's moat was their operations. Amazon's moat is its distribution, as is Coca-Cola's. Google has its culture and the sheer amount of data they have access to. Apple has its ecosystem, where each device locks you in a little bit tighter, until switching to something else becomes basically unthinkable. You see, the thing is, on your journey to a billion-dollar company, you're gonna be fighting to win customers, stealing market share, and fending off constant attacks from competitors who want to eat your lunch. A moat is what protects you in that fight, because it makes sure that once you win a customer, they stay with you. Which means that once you grow, you never shrink back down again. Once you've got a competitive moat, it's smooth sailing. But if you want to build a company that will still be around hundreds of years from now, you've still got a few interesting challenges to tackle, okay? Because even with a competitive moat, you need something that will always make people prefer to buy from you. So how do you do that? Well, the seventh challenge on the road to a billion-dollar company is to build an iconic brand. This is something that only a few companies really truly understand. Your features can be copied, your prices can be undercut, your competitors can always swoop in with something faster, cheaper, or shinier, but billion-dollar companies rarely sell the thing they sell. For example, Coca-Cola sells sugar water, but they really sell happiness, right? Nike sells sports apparel, but they really sell victory. Amazon sells convenience, Volvo sells safety, Toyota sells reliability. All of these massive companies sell a product, yes, absolutely, but what they really sell is what those products are associated with. To give you one more crazy example, look at Red Bull, okay? On paper, Red Bull sells an energy drink, but their brand is associated with energy, adventure, risk-taking, adrenaline, extreme sports, living on the edge. When people take a blind taste test and they don't actually know they're drinking Red Bull, they often call it disgusting. But slap a Red Bull logo on a can and suddenly they go crazy for it. That is the power of a brand. It elevates you from selling the thing to selling the thing behind the thing, the story. Billion-dollar businesses don't just sell products, they sell an identity. And if you manage to capture something special, you're gonna make a lot of money, my friend. Okay, so at this point, you're like 99% of the way there. You've built a product, distribution, a culture, a brand, operations, and secured a moat. But how do you make sure your company doesn't just reach $1 billion, but stays there basically forever? Well, the 8th challenge is becoming too big to fail. Apple is one obvious example here. At this point, their products are no longer just gadgets. They're how hordes of people communicate, work, pay for things, and store their memories. Millions of people couldn't imagine life without their iPhone simply because it's practically an extension of themselves. Or look at Microsoft. Their software is the backbone of governments, corporations, and critical infrastructure worldwide. Pull Microsoft out of the equation, and society as we know it grinds to a halt. But the real too-big-to-fail companies are often invisible. Take Visa and MasterCard. If they disappeared tomorrow, trillions of dollars in transactions would vanish overnight. Or look at the biggest banks. When things got, shaky in 2008, governments had no choice but to bail them out because otherwise the entire financial system would have gone down with them. Honestly, if you're building a company and you're going big, this is the end game, to become so deeply woven into people's lives that the world literally can't function without you. Alrighty, Aluxer, those were the 8 challenges you'll face on your way to building a billion-dollar company. We'd love to know what billion-dollar problem you would love to solve, so drop us a comment down below. And remember, if you're serious about actually improving your life and putting everything you're learning in these videos into action, scan that QR code on screen and get 25% off the Alux app. I'd love to see you on the inside. Whew, look how far we've made it today, all right? At this point, you've built a business worth at least $1 billion. And honestly, if you keep applying these skills that you learned in stage 3 to the challenges you have to overcome in stage 4, then your business can grow even beyond that. If you become one of the top 500 biggest companies in the US, it might mean you've joined Fortune 500, and as the CEO of one of these, life gets pretty interesting. But you know, people love to imagine Fortune 500 CEOs as superhumans or something, the kind of people who wake up at 4 a.m., meditate, close a billion-dollar deal before breakfast, and somehow make it home in time for family dinner. But if you actually look behind the curtain, running one of the world's biggest companies isn't what most people think. You're sitting at the intersection of money, politics, and global markets, and every decision you make sends shockwaves through all 3. So let's look at how these people actually get there, what they really do all day, and why, despite their wealth and power, they're only ever one mistake away from losing everything. These are the 5 secrets Fortune 500 CEOs don't want you to know. You know, people love to imagine Fortune 500 CEOs as superhumans or something, the kind of people who wake up at 4 a.m., meditate, close a billion-dollar deal before breakfast, and somehow still make it home in time for family dinner. But if you actually look behind the curtain, running one of the world's biggest companies isn't what most people think. You're sitting at an intersection of money, politics, and global markets, and every decision you make sends shockwaves through all 3. So let's take a look at how these people actually get there, what they really do all day long, and why, despite their wealth and power, they're only one mistake away from losing everything. These are the 5 secrets Fortune 500 CEOs don't want you to know. Alright, so the first secret Fortune 500 CEOs don't want you to know is that getting there barely has anything to do with talent, intelligence, or hard work. You see, when most people think about how somebody becomes a CEO of a company, they imagine a straight line. You start at the bottom, you work hard, impress people, climb the ladder step by step, and eventually you make it to the top. And while that's like a nice story and all, it's just not how it actually works. At the highest rungs of a company's leadership, hard work is kind of taken for granted. Everybody already works hard, everybody's smart, everybody's competent. So once you reach that level, effort and intelligence stop being the things that actually separate you from everybody else. Instead, the thing that determines who rises higher is perception. It's the story you tell about yourself. You see, CEOs don't just do the job, they're chosen for it. And the people doing the choosing, the board of directors, aren't necessarily looking for the most talented person in the building. They're looking for somebody they can trust to carry out the vision for a multi-billion-dollar company. For some companies, that means they want a leader who can paint a picture of what the future is supposed to be like and actually make it real. Think someone like Steve Jobs, rough around the edges but brilliant and willing to take big creative risks. For other companies, that might mean wanting a leader who looks calm, speaks clearly, and makes other powerful people feel safe investing in their company. Think someone like Tim Cook, smoother, more diplomatic, more composed. The point is, in big corporate environments, the climb to the top isn't just about results. It's about how those results are perceived. Basically, your reputation becomes your resume. So at the highest levels, people don't just do great work, they don't just work hard. Beyond that, they frame their work so it is visible, credible, and inspires trust. Now, that doesn't mean that these people are fake or anything. It means that they've mastered the human side of business, the trust building, the alliance making, the subtle reading of power dynamics that you're never going to learn in a lecture hall. Now, once they do get to the top, that same skill, projecting confidence and inspiring trust, becomes the core of the job. Because the truth is, a CEO doesn't know if their next product will be a hit, or what their competitors are working on, or whether there's going to be a recession in a year, but they still have to make decisions. So the only thing separating a good CEO from a bad one is the quality of the decisions they can make, even when they don't know everything. Their job is to project confidence, inspire trust in their decisions, and do everything in their power to be right. Because the moment the market or the board stops believing the story you're telling, it is over, my friend. All right, so the second secret is that Fortune 500 CEOs don't actually do any quote-unquote work. If you followed one of these folks around for a day, you'd probably be surprised at how unproductive their days look on the surface. They're not typing any reports, answering emails, or building any spreadsheets. They're not building any products or closing any sales. From the outside, it almost looks like they're not doing much at all. But that's because at that level, their job isn't to do. It is to read, think, analyze, and decide. Think of it like this, okay? When you're playing chess, you've got a bunch of pieces, but if you were to add an extra pawn on your side of the board, it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. When you're running a company with tens of thousands of employees, helping the warehouse guys move boxes around isn't gonna move that needle either. You can't afford to execute, you have to orchestrate. Then, in chess, every tiny little move you make affects the entire outlook of the game. Sometimes you make a seemingly insignificant move that's actually pure genius. But on the other hand, any tiny little move can completely wreck your defenses and lose the game. It's the same for CEOs. They have to be extremely careful with their decisions because every move they make triggers hundreds of smaller moves across the company. So that's why, instead of doing any of the actual work it takes for a company to operate, CEOs spend their days in meetings, reading reports, asking questions, and adjusting direction. And while that might sound like talking about work instead of doing it, that's kind of the point. CEOs know that you can trace a direct line from their decisions to the company's results, so they focus almost all of their time on analyzing the information they need to make that decision. And that's also why they delegate so aggressively. No one person could possibly micromanage a company operating in dozens of countries and generating billions in revenue. So in major corporations, every department, finance, marketing, operations, it's got its own leader, often another C-level executive who handles the day-to-day for their given division. What the CEO does is make sure those leaders have the resources they need to do their jobs. And then they get out of their way and go back to talking to people, thinking and deciding. Now, since the CEO isn't doing any of the actual work, it means their success depends entirely on the strength of the high-level people they delegate to, which is why one of their biggest responsibilities is hiring. Not mass hiring, they delegate that as well, but strategic hiring. A Fortune 500 CEO's job is to attract A players into a company, the kind of people who can 10x a department, open new markets, or create entire lines of business. But the thing is, these people already have incredible jobs, so getting them on board is a bit of a game of persuasion. Like we said, it's about the story you tell. The best CEOs are recruiters, negotiators, and salespeople all at once. They sell a vision that's big enough to make top talent uproot their lives to be a part of it. That's why when you look at a CEO's calendar, full of strategy meetings, phone calls, lunches with investors, and thinking time, it might look like they're not working in the traditional sense, but that's because their output isn't measured in hours worked or tasks completed. It is measured purely in the macro-level results they can create for a company. All right, secret number 3 that Fortune 500 CEOs don't want you to know is that the luxury lifestyle is part of the job. A few weeks ago, President Trump flew over to the UK for a lavish banquet at Windsor Castle with the King of England himself. There were 160 guests, and among them were the CEOs or major leaders of OpenAI, Apple, Nvidia, News Corp, Blackstone, United Health, Google, Bank of America, Newsmax, Microsoft, even the directors of the CIA and MI6. The point is, when most people see a CEO stepping out of a private jet or staying in a 5-star hotel, the first reaction is usually, wow, must be nice. And it's easy to think of those perks as indulgence. But in reality, luxury is a part of a CEO's job description, okay? People like to say business is about merit, about those who have the best product, the best idea, the best numbers. But the truth is, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. If you're managing billions of dollars, you don't want to gamble on a stranger with a great pitch deck. You want someone whose face you've seen 100 times, someone you've shaken hands with, laughed with, maybe even vacationed with. That's why CEOs spend so much of their time at places like Davos, the World Economic Forum, or quiet retreats with other executives and investors. Because the most important deals usually happen over dinner, on golf courses, at private events, and yes, even royal banquets. So yeah, okay, Fortune 500 CEOs live lives of extreme luxury, but that is a part of the machinery that keeps the world turning. It's a business expense, and it usually pays off. Now, the 4th secret is that there are actually 2 types of CEOs, and the difference between them is like night and day. The first group is the builders. They're entrepreneurs at heart, okay, risk takers. So they either come in when things are broken and say, let's tear this whole thing down and rebuild it from scratch, or they actually build something from scratch. You can usually spot them because instead of speaking in quarterly results or market forecasts, they speak in terms of impact. Let's reinvent how cars are made. Let's change how people think about computers. That's the builder mindset. People like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and Reed Hastings all fit that mold. Then there's the second type, the optimizers. These are the CEOs who come in when something already works, when a company is already too big and important to risk it all again. Now, these folks are called the optimizers because their job isn't to reinvent the wheel, it's to keep shareholders happy, analysts confident, and quarterly reports clean. They're supposed to keep the money coming in and find small ways to improve over time. In a Fortune 500 context, if nobody's panicking, the stock price is growing steady, and the company's reputation is intact. That is success. So you might not remember the optimizers' names, but that's the point. They're not supposed to make the headlines. As companies mature, they stop rewarding the visionary builder type and start rewarding the manager who can maintain order. And that's both the strength and the weakness of corporate leadership. You can't run a $300 billion company with the same energy that started it in a garage. So the builder either evolves into an optimizer or gets replaced by one. All right, so the fifth secret is that Fortune 500 CEOs are always one mistake away from losing everything, okay? From the outside, it doesn't really look like that. You're the highest authority in a global company. You've got final say on billion-dollar decisions. But in reality, no matter how high you climb, there's always someone above you, the board of directors, and they can remove you with a single vote. You see, Fortune 500 CEOs don't actually own the companies they work in. They serve them, and they're supposed to serve them well. That's why CEOs are under constant pressure. Every 3 months, the entire market grades a CEO's performance in real time. If the company beats expectations, they're a genius. If they miss by even a few percentage points, suddenly they're losing their edge. On top of that, everything they say or do is magnified, right? A single line in an interview can embarrass the company. A poorly timed tweet can trigger lawsuits. Even an awkward facial expression can cause people to lose confidence in a company. Remember when Zuckerberg was pretending to drink water in Congress? As a CEO, you're under scrutiny every time you're in public. So for all their wealth and power, most Fortune 500 CEOs live in constant fear because they're just one bad quarter or one bad decision away from losing everything. It goes to show that leadership is a never-ending test. So now you've got a taste of what it's really like to be a Fortune 500 CEO. And with that, you're finally at the end of the 5 stages of growing a business. At the start of this video, you barely had a business idea, and now you've got the complete roadmap to turn it into the world's next best company. So go ahead, my friend, it is time to put everything you learned today into action and start building generational wealth. If you want to learn how to do that bit by bit every day, remember, go check out the Alux app by scanning the QR code on screen. The journey that you've just walked through in this video, we've built it inside, so invest in your education, my friend. It'll always pay the best dividends. And invest in yourself because, look, nobody else is going to build your life for you. That is on you. All right, with that said, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this massive video. And a big thanks from everyone on the Alux team. We'll see you back here next time. Until then, take care, my friend.